Bhagavad Gita Chapter 1, Shlokas 26 and 27 show one of the most sensitive psychological moments in the entire Gita. Arjuna is not yet asking questions about the soul, karma, death, detachment, or liberation. He is simply looking. But that looking becomes the beginning of his inner breakdown. When Arjuna sees the people standing in both armies, he does not see only soldiers. He sees his own family, teachers, elders, friends, relatives, and well-wishers. The battlefield suddenly becomes a karmic mirror. The war outside begins to expose the attachment inside. This is the reason these verses are very important. Before Krishna gives the highest wisdom, the Gita first shows the human mind in its most vulnerable condition. Arjuna's crisis is not cowardice. He is a trained warrior. His crisis begins when Dharma becomes emotionally difficult. It is easy to speak about duty when it does not touch our personal attachments. But when duty stands against family bonds, inherited loyalties, memories, and emotional conditioning, the mind begins to shake. These two verses show that exact shaking of Arjuna's mind. Tatra pasyat sthitan partha pitran atha pitamahan akaryan, matulan bratran putran pautran sakyams tatha shvashuran suhardash, kaiva sinayor ubhayor api. There, Arjuna saw standing between the both armies, his fathers, grandfathers, teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons, friends, fathers-in-law, relatives, and well-wishers. This verse is not merely giving a list of relatives. It is showing how deeply Arjuna's consciousness is tied to the people standing before him. Every relationship mentioned here carries a psychological meaning. Fathers and grandfathers represent ancestry, family authority, and inherited duties. Teachers represent old knowledge, discipline, and respect. Maternal uncles, brothers, sons, and grandsons represent blood connection and family continuity. Friends and well-wishers represent emotional support, loyalty, and personal affection. Fathers-in-law and relatives represent social bonds and family structure. So when Arjuna looks at the battlefield, he is not seeing an enemy camp. He is seeing his own past, his own upbringing, his own emotional world, and his own identity standing against him. This is why his mind starts becoming unstable. The opposition is no longer external. It has become internal. The deeper message is that life often places a person in situations where the real battle is not with strangers, but with attachments that have shaped the personality for years. Many times, a person knows what is right, but family expectations, emotional guilt, ancestral habits, and old conditioning stop the person from acting clearly. This is the karmic mirror. Arjuna is being shown that Dharma is not tested in comfort. Dharma is tested when the decision touches the heart. The verse prepares us to understand that Arjuna's struggle is not just about war. It is about the difficulty of choosing truth when truth challenges emotional belonging. Tan samiksya sakaunteya sarvan bandhun avasthitan kripaya paraya visto visidan idam abravit. Seeing all these relatives standing before him, Arjuna, the son of Kunti, became overwhelmed with deep compassion and grief, and then spoke the following words. This verse reveals the immediate effect of what Arjuna has seen. The word kirpaya shows compassion, but here his compassion is mixed with grief and emotional confusion. The word visidan means that he becomes sorrowful, disturbed, and despondent. His inner strength begins to weaken because his heart is now caught between duty and attachment. This is very important. Arjuna is not becoming emotional because he lacks courage. He becomes disturbed because he is unable to separate true compassion from attachment. He thinks his sorrow is compassion, but it is also mixed with fear of loss, guilt, family memory, and emotional dependence. The Gita is showing us a very subtle truth. Sometimes the mind presents attachment in the form of kindness. Sometimes weakness appears as morality. Sometimes fear appears as sensitivity. This is why Krishna later has to clarify the difference between wisdom and emotional collapse. Arjuna's condition is the condition of every person who reaches a turning point in life. When a person must leave an old pattern, break a harmful cycle, take a difficult decision, or stand for a higher principle, the mind often brings emotional arguments. It says, what about family? What about society? What about old loyalties? What will people think? What if I hurt others? This is exactly where Arjuna stands. His bow is still in his hand, but his mind has already started losing stability. His grief is the doorway through which the teaching of the Gita will enter. The most important point in verses 26 and 27 is that the Gita begins its highest teaching by first showing emotional confusion. Krishna does not begin by giving philosophy to a calm person. He gives wisdom to a person whose mind has been shaken by attachment, grief, and inner conflict. These verses teach that spiritual growth does not begin when life is peaceful. It often begins when the soul is forced to face its deepest attachments. Arjuna's relatives on the battlefield represent more than family members. They represent inherited emotional bonds, ancestral patterns, social duties, guilt, love, fear, and identity. The purpose of these verses is to show that before a person can understand Dharma, the person must first see where attachment is controlling the mind. Arjuna's breakdown is not the end of his strength. It is the beginning of his deeper awakening. These two slokas gives us the message that the greatest battlefield is not always outside. Sometimes it is within the heart, where love, duty, memory, fear, and truth stand facing each other. Arjuna's pain becomes the starting point of the Bhagavad Gita, because only when the mind admits its confusion can higher wisdom begin.